What's up, ladies and Gentiles? I just jumped out of the shower, so my hair's probably a little bit wet. Let's dive into World Wars and take a look at all these edicts here. So first up, we have Audience. Audience, if you are playing the political game and you're not using martial law, this will be one of the best edicts for you to pick. It will trigger 3 missions, like you see over here. It'll give you extra standing so you don't have rebels and all these crazy demand nonsense going on. Now, what's good with this actually is if you are focusing on your Swiss bank account, you can go over to brokers and I'm going to have to refresh here. So as you can see, you can get a convincing talk. So what you can do is you can launch that edict and then do a couple convincing talks, and it's basically free opinion to help you get reelected. Well, free if your Swiss bank account is doing well. We'll go over here to our bank. Your slush funds will essentially pay for one of those transactions. There are many other ways to get funds for your broker, but the point is just the bank by itself would be enough to complete these 3 missions before the election. And if it's not, you can always go to your constitution or what have you and start chucking out some actions. Next up is agricultural subsidies. Your efficiency is going to be increased by 30%, but it's going to cost you 45% more. So then you have to ask yourself, are you making more profit than you're losing here? And the answer to that is always going to be yes. Even at a max budget, the building cost itself is not that high. You're going to take 18 away from 54, which means even with that edict, it's only costing me about 36 to run this building anyways. And it's going to make me far more money than it will have cost me, because it's not taking the wage into account, it's taking the upkeep of the building itself. So as long as you don't mind losing capitalist standing, there's no reason not to take this. Also, side note for wonders, just saying, Temple of Heaven, really, really good for that if you do a crop or juice focused economy. So the building permit is another one that ties in with Audience as far as getting a bunch of Swiss funds, helping that situation out. I don't do it because I don't like losing the 10% communist standing. I don't feel like it gives enough, but you may find it worth it if you're building a lot. And if you're using your Swiss bank account, you might also find it useful. So very situational. It does have its use. I would say this one is particularly good for playing the political game, as long as you can keep your communists under control. Now, state loans is going to be high-level gameplay. Generally, you only want to take this if you really know what you're doing. If you mess up taking that loan and you have to pay that back over 10 years, you can potentially end your game. So only take state loans when you have to or when you're fairly confident with your playstyle. But it is very good. Just be very careful with that. I typically don't use it in games because I don't like having debt. That one's self-explanatory. So the wealth tax is actually what I used in the city build here. Looking at my 2,197 rich citizens, not including the filthy rich, that would be over $15,000 just from that one edict, which is kind of crazy. There's not a lot of edicts that will give you that much crazy amounts of money just for clicking one button. So 15k a month just for that one edict, kind of crazy. You will want to be running this if you're doing a mostly rich empire. If you're doing a primarily military empire or something that relies more on industry, you'll want to, weigh and balance things, but just keep an eye when you're using this on your book over here and see how much money you're actually getting here when you take this into consideration. Me personally, I would always take this unless I were worried about my communist faction. The wealth tax is also best used alongside child allowances so that more of your families are wealthy. We're going to cheat a little bit and go to the Cold War era. Social Security here. If you get your average wage high enough and pair it up with the wealth tax, you can be generating money off of retired people, which is kind of neat. This also pairs very well with the Taj Mahal. So you're just making money on top of money. Really good for old, keeping your population old for a long time. Making money off of them when they die, taxing them when they're retired. It's you can do some pretty funny things with that. This next one is Industrialization. This is essentially the free money button. It costs only 5,000 to use it, and as you'll see, most of these, this costs almost 11,000. This costs 12,000. Cigar Factory 15,000. I think the only thing it wouldn't be worth it is if you only build one cannery or one lumber mill or one tannery. But most of these other buildings, yeah, maybe one furniture factory. Other than that, all the other buildings, unless I missed one, appear to benefit from this. So if you're going to build more than one of those buildings that cost less than 10,000, that's worth it. And if you're going to build even just one of those higher tier buildings, the industrialization is always worth it. It's free money, as long as you plan on building one of those buildings right after using this. I think the main tip I would use is make sure you have about 20 or 30 grand in your bank before you do use this, because you can save a lot of money and you can get, potentially a year or two ahead in the game just timing this one right. Early elections, you're going to have to be a man or woman with a plan for this one. There may be other uses for this, but the best one that I found is right before I'm about to do something really radical. Like, let's say I'm going to delete all my offices and I'm going to do something crazy and switch my economy over to a farm economy. And, they're not very happy right now, but say that they're happy. I would go ahead and rush the election, get them to vote for me before I start switching everything over, because when I start switching it over, they're probably not going to be very happy in that short amount of time frame. I'm sure there are other uses for this, but that's the one that stands out the most to me, is when you're switching your industries and your housing and you need to get the election over with so you can make these changes. Quite useful. The literacy program is so worth it. These buildings take up so much space. The high school takes a huge amount of space. The college takes a huge amount of space. And you're already paying a bunch of money for education anyways. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't do this. If you're building the buildings, they're there to be used, so may as well make the best of it. That said, if you're going to be using this, the best thing to use it in tandem with is going to be Atheist State, because you're going to get a 50% boost on top of that if you really want to go hard into education. Something else you can use to help out your high schools and colleges is the support public service feature in the library. If you're really trying to pack it all in together. If you really want to double, triple, quadruple down on education, you can always use the Registan. To me personally, it's kind of redundant because your high schools aren't going to get a lot of use, so it'll just be affecting your colleges. But if you want a lot of college jobs, that may be what you want to do. So yeah, that's one of my favorites right there. Martial law, I'm sure everyone has touched this at some point and found out the consequences of doing so. If you use this, you will be in constant warfare with your empire, and they are going to keep trying to attack your capital here. If you'll notice, I surrounded my capital with guard towers here, but they aren't filled up because I lowered the max population I could do for roleplay reasons and keeping the lag down for the video. But you will want a lot of military to protect your capital here, because if El Presidente dies, you lose the game. However, as long as you don't get killed and you're able to take out the rebel armies, you will never lose the game. This is the 100% way to never lose the game and never lose an election. I like to use this one a lot just because I don't like to manage the speeches all the time and keep people happy. This game has been going for a little while and you can kind of see what it looks like here. Basically, the militarists are the primary people who are A-okay with this. So if you want a very happy martial law population, you can use military education, and your media, like Channel of Duty, you can go to each of your buildings and they'll have something similar to this, and you can increase the chance of getting those types of populations that will support your martial law. So yeah, that's the I can't lose button as long as I have a pointier stick than the rebels. If you do end up using this, I would recommend going to your constitution and using professional soldiers for better squads. And you'll probably want the Hikun Castle. I don't know if I said that right. Future me has found out that it is pronounced Hikone, or something to that tone, and that will help tremendously. Another one that's very good is the Winter Palace. That essentially gives you a second chance. So if you would have gotten overwhelmed by the rebels, they will have attacked this instead. That's pretty much SSS tier as far as martial law goes. Prohibition is a double-edged sword because your entertainment buildings are so useful. And if you were to choose something such as the Colosseum, it's going to damage a lot of the efficiency on buildings that you will have used to make them happier, such as your gourmet restaurants. However, I find the 15% efficiency boost to be so incredibly useful that even though I run the Colosseum, I still use this anyways because it boosts everything by 15%. That includes your offices over here, which are getting a boost here. It even improves your military, your banks, your schools, your power supply. I mean, I don't want to take an entertainment hit as much as anyone else, but I'll take a loss like that if I'm getting that many benefits. What is ironic is it decreases your crime safety by 10, but it also increases the efficiency of your prisons. And so you can actually, if you're trying to make money or get people with an education, it will help that go quicker too. Prohibition's very, very good. Next up is bells to bullets. If you're doing a religious playthrough, this one's going to hurt you quite a bit. Now, if you're doing a martial law playthrough or you don't care about religion at all, this one's going to be very useful. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Big, strong military, you know, good against rebels. Everything that I said about martial law essentially applies to this, so I'm not going to go over it twice, with the exception of you may want to reconsider it if you're going the religious route. Here's the third redundant policy regarding military. With this one, you essentially don't need police stations if you place your buildings right. So if you notice, I have army bases spaced out here. And what these guys are doing is they're arresting all the criminals, acting as a police station. So as all my people wander into town to get food or something, right? My military base will arrest the people going to these restaurants or going to get some food. And yeah, you can kill two birds with one stone, military and police station. It's a little less useful and redundant if you're using theocracy. I guess it depends on how many criminals you're trying to arrest though. The military and religion seem to conflict in their interest or overlap. So that's something to think about. And you can use that to your advantage or disadvantage. The free wheels, it does cost $7.50 a month, but considering that everyone can get to and from their workplace super quickly, I would say it's pretty solid. Now, if you're going to use this, you're going to need a lot of parking decks scattered throughout, and it works even better when you're less centralized. And so, let's say this guy's got to run all the way over from one side of town to go over here to work in the mines or whatever. So as long as you're using the parking decks, this one can be useful. If you're running on a lot of low-paying jobs, if you're not using a lot of low-paying jobs, you may find less use for this. Rights to arms is pretty interesting in that it decreases your military standing and raises the other standings, but it also boosts your military damage. And it's so easy to get the military faction happy anyways, I just run this pretty much no matter what. It's again redundant with the last three military policies. However, I would not let the decreased military standing bother you if you're already running the other military policies, because you're already going to have a high standing, so that's not going to matter. Consequences are negligible. The Tropico papers is a new one they added with one of the last updates. While you may find some use for this, using what most of these seem to be supporting, which is martial law, this is generally going to be used to help out with your broker, to buy tasks, to help out with your opinion. I don't think many people would be using this in the World War era. Maybe you're really good at the game and making money early on. I personally prefer to progress faster to the modern era as fast as possible. And so this does not seem like a viable option until the end game, where in multiplayer, if you want to purchase land, or if you're going the political route and you're just trying to boost your favor. I can tell you what you do not want to do. What you do not want to do is come over here and build a mansion, because what's going to happen is you're going to be taking a lot of space with these mansions, and you're going to be paying a lot of rent, unless, you know, you knock it down way low over here. My recommendation, since it does not make the building not pay rent, but rather the citizen itself, would be to shove these guys in as many apartments and modern apartments as you can. And then you'll get the most bang for your buck, unless you have tons of excess funds and you want them to live in a life of luxury, which again is a little early for World Wars. Wow, that was a mouthful. Okay, so next video we tackle the World Wars. I'm out. Peace.